Well, hello, studio teacher friends. Welcome to the Beyond Measure podcast with me, Christina Whitlock. We are deep in the middle of our summertime conversation series, which, can I just say, has been so great. We will be back to regular episodes with just me in August, but until then, I have several more terrific guest conversations to share with you. Today's episode features one of my best real-life teacher friends, Amy Chaplin. Amy is such an important voice in our profession. She's honestly the only piano teacher, maybe the only musician I know, who is exceptionally organized. Almost every piano studio I've ever walked into is overflowing with stacks of books and other things, but not Amy's. In addition to her general tidiness, Amy has found several niches in piano teacher world that really benefit from her unique perspective. She offers regular coaching sessions on digital organization, including summer retreats in her actual home. And she's recently started offering these incredible workshops on using the Notion app to organize your life. She holds certifications from the Gordon Institute in music learning theory. I mean, there are just so many cool things to say about Amy Chaplin. Most of you likely know her from her Piano Pantry blog, which has been around since 2016, as well as the Piano Pantry podcast. Today, Amy and I are talking about coping with the overwhelm of possibilities in our profession. And then you can catch her talking about studio marketing strategies in our bonus conversation over in the Patreon community. So head to ChristinaWhitlock.com/Patreon for all that info and more. Here we go, friends! You are listening to episode 176 of the Beyond Measure podcast, featuring the fabulous Amy Chaplin and I. Amy Chaplin, my very good friend, it's so nice to have you on the podcast. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited that you're finally doing some interviews and I get to be on.
I know. You and I talk all the time, so we might as well just give everyone a chance to listen in, right?
Good idea. Yes.
So I consider you, kind of like me, to be a really good idea person. So whether it's the way we manage our studios or the content we create for teachers, you and I both seem to have kind of a never-ending supply of ideas and projects that we could be doing, right? We'll talk more about that whole overwhelm component in a minute. But the really big question for today is, since we're revisiting episode 138, which was all about naming things that we choose not to do in our studios, I'm wondering, Amy Chaplin, tell me something or a few somethings that you intentionally choose not to do in your studio.
Well, I think this is such a fun question. And I absolutely love the episode that you did. It was one of those that I'm like, man, I wish I would have thought of that myself. That was a great idea. So fun. I'm glad that I get to talk about this too.
Nice.
I have several things, but I'm going to start with some of those that I think might kind of poke people a little bit harder, like shocking kind of stuff, I think. One of those is festivals and competitions. And I started out in my early days dabbling in our state's AIM festival, which a lot of teachers have access to similar programs in their states. And it was fine. And I always just made it very open, like whoever's interested in doing it. I never made it a required thing. I don't really have anything in my town. Like this is a 45-minute drive to go to these things. And I never grew up myself participating in a lot of this. I did Guild maybe a couple of times, I vaguely remember. And I just remember as a kid thinking like, okay, I'm doing this, whatever. I don't remember feeling the pressure or feeling like it was like a big thing. So I think that kind of translated into myself and my own studio. and what I wanted to do. And it just never felt like something to me that was necessary, I guess. I only had less than a half a dozen students ever participate in the festivals. So I did it for maybe 6 years, something like that. And finally, I was just like, you know what? I don't have a lot of students going. And every time I go, I have to work the entire day, which I understand. That's fine. But I just didn't feel like it was something that was adding enough value for my students that it was worth the effort. So, anyways, not that it's not a valuable thing, but just wasn't working for me.
Yeah, we all have our whole studio cultures and our own student bodies and things that are going to work and resonate with one another. And I know for me, we do a local festival, the NFMC Gold Cup situation. And for years, I had thought about backing out of it for a myriad of reasons, but I've had some students who are so enthusiastic about it and some parents who are so enthusiastic about it that I've always kind of kept going. But a few years ago, I had one summer where I had sent out fall registrations and I had 3 parents come back and say, well, so and so wants to continue, but they don't want to do festival. So if that's a deal breaker, then we'll just not re up our registration. And I was like, are you kidding? Like, of course it's not required. I said, if they don't want to do festival, it's done. And so I realized that I wasn't, I guess, as clear as communicating it as an optional event. And so ever since then, I've been really clear with families that if this is something that's going to be motivating for your students, which I have some who are highly motivated by it, so it works. But I also have plenty of families who sit out now and don't think twice about it. And that's fine. It's actually really nice when we're gearing up for those events and I get to have lessons with the students who are not participating. I get really excited.
Yeah.
So
I think if you always had it in your studio and like you started with it as a big thing, it might feel hard to step down from that a little bit, but I never pushed it at the start, so when I had just 3 students 1 year ago, and I mean, I think they enjoyed it, but I don't think that they were like die hard. It was just an easy, like, let's just focus our energy somewhere else because
yeah.
preparing for those things really takes a lot of extra time away from other things.
It does. It really messes with the studio calendar and with your trajectory of what you're working on. And so it has to be worth it to you. So good for you for just saying, look, I don't have to do this. I'm going to not do festivals. Good for you, Amy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're really good at changing your mind. So if you decide to go back to it sometime, you'll do it.
That's right. That's right. The other thing I don't do is technique books. What about you, Christina? Do you do
Ooh.
technique books at all?
Like in terms of like a method series technique book,
Yes,
not
like method.
yeah, not usually. Very, very
Yeah.
rarely will I use one. So
I
I
tried them
find
in my very early days of teaching, and you got your lesson, your performance, your technique, your theory, and you do them all. And they just felt so heavy to me. I just never personally liked them. And I just became a lot more about look at the piano, learn the patterns, let's play them. And I rarely use any kind of books whatsoever. I've done some like visual guides or scale fingering charts, but a lot of times I just get a post-it note and the student writes like the notes of the scale, they write the fingerings underneath of it, things like that. And I'm working on my own visual technique book if it ever gets out someday. I don't know if it ever will, but yeah, but most of the technique books out there I've gone away from a long time ago.
hmm One of the things about a method series is it's typically written almost for the teacher. So the teacher knows what to do and what to be working on with their students, right? And that's an excellent guide. Like, hallelujah that they exist. But once you have a really clear idea on how you teach technique and what you're looking for from your students, then I find a lot of that can be supplemented on occasion. Or if your student is struggling with something, then I have them on hand and I can throw them at them for a week. I went through a phase where I used to just keep library copies of the technique books because, particularly with Favor Piano Adventures, their technique books are good. I do like what they do. I just don't find them wholly necessary through the week, and my students tend to not do them during the week, even if they have them.
Right.
So,
Like in the early days when I was first teaching, it was great
Mhm.
to have that. I needed that because I didn't know anything about pedagogy before I ever went to get my master's degree, of course. So like I needed that learning process to see like, what am I supposed to be doing? That's something I chatted about with Gretchen Steffen, one of my former piano students a couple episodes ago, because she's a newer teacher and she was kind of talking about that for herself. That was one thing that was kind of surprising to her that she appreciated was that she didn't have to figure it out herself, that she had those guides to help her know what to teach. So there's a time and a place for everything.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we can't use it all, right? Which actually segues perfectly into the next thing I wanted to talk about, which is the fact that I feel like there are these two kinds of teachers in our profession. There are those who are so settled in their traditions and in their approaches that they really struggle to do anything new. And then there are those of us who are so taken with the wealth of resources that we have and the idea of like the next big thing that we end up completely overwhelmed by the possibilities of the profession, right? I think that that's actually one of the hardest things about being a piano teacher in our world today is that there's so much we can use and there's so much we can do and there's so many ways we can run our studios. Like, do you feel the same way?
Definitely. And you know me, I've always been one that embraces all the possibilities. I love trying new things. I mean, it's endless.
Yeah. I think one of the ways that this always shows up for me, knowing what I know about you, is like summers. Like you do something different like every summer, I think. And I love that you're not afraid to step out of the box and re-examine what's going to work for you in your teacher life this summer. But also, I know you and I sometimes plan these things together. And there's always a stage where it's so overwhelming at first because there are so many different things we could do in the summer.
I've done something every summer that's different. And it's funny because it's been several years now. I feel like we're texting each other or calling each other, like, what do you think about this? Do you think this is going to work? And I think the cool thing about that, though, is just shows that no matter how seasoned you are, you don't always have all the answers. Like this year was, while I'm always wanting to try new things and I do something different every single summer, this year was the first time I felt a little bit of overwhelm about it. And I think it's because I was making more than just a little micro adjustment. Like I was really trying to do something a lot different. So that was a little overwhelming to me. Now I'm going to make some big changes. Like there's all these possibilities that I could do. Should I do it like this or should I do it like this or should, like,
Mhm.
and I think that if you're someone that doesn't like change, that's probably one reason for it. But can you just do one thing? Like, can you just try one little new thing and move forward that way? Because if you don't, I think it's easy to get kind of stuck too in always doing the same thing and never doing things fresh.
Yeah, I also think it's a matter of remembering that there is not one right answer. Like you're just going to have to make a decision, like I always say, like choose boldly and move forward, right? And don't worry about, oh, was this the right decision or the wise decision or could I have made more? Could I have done more? Like at the end of the day, you have to make a choice and move forward, right?
Yep. And it's not going to be the end of the world if it doesn't work out. Like just do
Yeah.
something different next time. That's the beauty of our businesses is that we do have flexibility to do it really however we want.
Yeah, I feel like I keep running across things online that are talking about how a lot of times, whereas piano teachers, we feel like we were musicians first and the business came second. We had to learn the business part of what we do, but it's not our passion. And that's true for a lot of us. But at the same time, business is actually creativity. And we are creatives first and foremost. And if we harness that, if we say, like, okay, how can I run my business or how can I make money in a creative way using these skills that I have? There's actually so much flexibility and there's so much possibility.
And I love hearing you say that. That makes me feel a lot better because honestly, like I've always felt a little bit shy of admitting that I love teaching, but I also really love just running my business. And I don't want anybody to ever think like, well, she likes her business more than her students. It's not like that at all. I appreciate hearing that running our business is also a creative endeavor, right?
Yeah,
So, yeah,
it
thank you,
is.
Christina. You gave me a little encouragement there.
Oh, well, so happy to do it. Yeah, you are so strong in business and your skills and your knowledge about marketing and all of those things are really just top notch. And something else that you have really carved out a nice niche in our industry for is organization. Thinking about this sense of overwhelm that is easy to accumulate in our work, how does that play into our personal like studio organization or lack thereof sometimes?
So I think that teachers are often understandably focused on teaching practices and lesson strategies and motivating students to practice. And we just grab onto like every new fun idea and every freebie that's out there. And I think that it's getting better, at least for myself. So I don't know if that translates to everyone, but I feel like now that we've had the internet for a long time,
Yeah.
like within the past 5 years, there's a lot more creators and things going on out there. I feel like I'm doing a better job filtering what's coming at me from out there. Because in the early days, when I first started teaching, we had what? Wendy Stevens, we
Mhm.
had Natalie Weber, we
Mhm.
had Susan Parody,
Mhm.
like just a few. And now there are just tons of people doing things and it's all fabulous work. But I think that that can play into the overwhelm is because there's so many cool things out there.
Mhm.
So I think that it's about filtering a little bit and not letting so many things come at us and starting with what we have. Are you using what you already have? Do you have 30 games and you've never used half of them? Like, do you have lots of improvisation ideas and you've never tried any of them? When I do digital coaching stuff, a lot of times I talk about don't worry about organizing absolutely everything that you have. Just start from the here on out.
I've done digital coaching with you for 2 sessions, by the way, always worth it. And that's something that I've really taken from you is that, okay, it's very overwhelming to deal with the backlog, but let's get some systems in place that are going to allow us to deal with what comes in from here on out. And then you can kind of work through the backlog as you go. I think with social media, it's just so tricky because we all take inspiration from each other on so many things, but everyone's out there trying to give you their stuff. And it's all so good, but it doesn't do you any good if you just are collecting it all and not using it. And I am so guilty of that. You know I am.
I'm guilty too, honestly. Like I'm not void of this.
Mhm. Well, that's so encouraging to hear. Amy, tell us what you're up to these days and where people can find more out about you if they somehow don't know what you do on the internet.
Well, I've got the Piano Pantry blog at pianopantry.com and the Piano Pantry podcast. I'm on Instagram at Piano Pantry Amy and on Facebook, of course, at just Piano Pantry. So, like you mentioned, I do retreats for teachers. That is something that I've been really just enjoying these days. And in the last 7 years that I've been doing content creation, I think I've definitely recognized that I most value connections with teachers at that small, more micro level. And so doing the retreats has been a real treat.
Yeah, and I have been hosted by you multiple occasions, and I can say you're such a gracious host and always welcoming in your beautiful home. So that is definitely something teachers should keep on radar, and the content is really valuable and kind of life-changing.
It's just fun coming together with other teachers in that real intimate setting together. So
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so here we go. I've got a closing question this summer. And I want to know something in your life that you just really love, like beyond measure.
I love Trader Joe's because there's always different things there. And I love
Mhm.
change. I love trying new things. And it's just like a gold mine to me. Like every
I
time I
love
go,
that.
I'm just like, this is so cool.
Shout out to Trader Joe's. Okay, great. That's perfect for you because it fits food and it fits change and all the
Yes.
things that are Amy Chaplin. All right, Amy, I think it's time for our closing toast. So hit us with what you got.
Cheers to the never ending amount of resources our profession provides. May we do better at filtering what and how much we allow to come through into our own personal stockpile. Hear, hear.
Hear, hear. So thank you, Amy, for being on the podcast today. I'm sure everyone will enjoy the points of ponder that we've given them for today.
Thanks so much for having me on.
That's a wrap on this episode, friends. But remember, there is more where that came from. Head to ChristinaWhitlock.com/Patreon to learn more about how you can get access to all kinds of bonus goodies for just a few dollars this summer. I am convinced the Patreon community is pretty much the most affordable professional development on the internet. Pay special attention to the new offering called What Should I Teach Next? Because it's really good, if I do say so myself. One more favor to ask of you today. If you love this show, will you please take a moment and share it with other teacher friends? I know there are more teachers out there who need an anytime piano teacher friend in their lives, and I am ready and willing to do the job. Thanks in advance, my friends. That'll do it for today. Onward and upward toward making the world a more musical place.